We've got some stuff to talk about. If you guys are somehow unaware, Critical Role has been in the middle of some pretty major announcements following the successful release of Daggerheart. Most recently, as of recording this video, they announced that Matt Mercer would no longer be DMing for their Dungeons & Dragons campaign. And based on this and some of the wording used during the teaser, it's also very likely that their D&D campaign will no longer be a D&D campaign. I mean, they did just release a fantasy RPG meant for long-form campaigns that caters to the playstyle of Critical Role, so, it makes sense that they'd use that system, Daggerheart, as their main system during the campaign. And this leads to a very natural question. What happens to Critical Role now? This is a brand that has been going for over a decade. They've been doing this a long time, and they've grown into by far the most successful Dungeons & Dragons show to grace the internet. It is insane, everything they've done when you put it in retrospect. But can they continue to succeed without D&D and without Matt Mercer in the DMing chair? Those are some big questions, and I don't really have the answers, but hey, we're here to yap about it because that's what the show is all about. So without further ado, let's start with Matt Mercer. While we can speculate about why Matt Mercer left, I don't think it takes a genius to figure it out. Running a D&D game is hard. It's hard, guys. It's hard in general. But if you're running your tabletop game in front of literally hundreds of thousands to millions of people every single week, I can imagine that kind of pressure gets to be a lot. Couple that with the fact the brand is expanding and Mercer, as well as the rest of the cast, their attention is being divided elsewhere. Yeah, Mercer wanting to swap out with a new Dungeon Master is not completely out of left field, especially since the new Game Master of Critical Role's Campaign 4 is Brennan Lee Mulligan. If you guys somehow don't know about him, he is the DM behind a lot of the most popular campaigns of Dimension 20, which already, that's pretty solid in his resume, but beyond that, he also DM'd for some of the most popular short campaigns in Critical Role history, most notably Calamity, which, I don't know many people who dislike Calamity, especially since it happened during the Campaign 3 debacle era, where a lot of people were hating on Critical Role's Campaign 3, and a lot of the new stuff they were doing, like Exandria Unlimited. Calamity came out of nowhere and just knocked it out of the park, and hell, in my opinion, every single thing Brennan does for Critical Role in terms of their short campaigns has knocked it out of the park. He has the funny angle, the charm, the humor from Dimension 20, but in the Critical Role short campaigns, he also showed he could bring the drama. And we love that here. So I think Brennan was a natural choice. But there was also an announcement during the same time that got people really sweating, and that was the new cast. I've said before that Critical Role's cast, the cast that they started the show with, minus Orion Akaba, is pretty much lightning in a bottle. If you've worked in any sort of entertainment or publishing industry and you're trying to get on-camera talent, you know that chemistry really, really matters. And sometimes it can be hard to find. It's even harder to cultivate sometimes. But Critical Role, they literally grabbed just the people who went to Liam O'Brien's birthday D&D game, stuck them into a studio, and had picture-perfect chemistry that has lasted almost flawlessly for 11 years. That is insanity. They bounce off each other so well. If you ask me, which member of the cast would you be okay with losing? I really couldn't give you a solid answer just because they all contribute so much and work together so well. But during the same announcement where Matt Mercer announced he'd be stepping down as GM, they also announced that there would be some new players joining the cast, which would include Matt Mercer. He's going to be a player in this campaign, which, side note, really looking forward to seeing him as a player, because when I've seen him as a player in other stuff, he's great. He's awesome. So I imagine this is going to be great too. But yeah, that announcement of new cast members that will be joining the old cast, that led to the question of who's going to be leaving and is this still going to be good? Well, again, I don't really know. This does make me way more nervous than the new GM announcement. I mean, new GM would be scary if we didn't know who was GMing, but knowing it's Brennan, I'm interested, okay? I like the way he GMs. Not as much as I like Mercer's style, but I still like the way he GMs. Just saying new cast without saying who's leaving and who's coming in, yeah, I think it's reasonable that some people are sweating bullets over that. I, too, was nervous about swapping out cast members just because of the infamous party split. If you're not in the Critical Role zeitgeist, most people are going to understand that I'm talking about the party split that happened in Campaign 3, where for 2 months, half the cast was in one location of the world and half the cast was in the other location. And those halves were joined by a bunch of guest players. These crews were somewhat controversial, especially the one that joined Imogen and FCG. There was a lot of whinging, including from me, especially since the party split lasted like a while. We didn't have the full cast reunited for like 2 months. And now we have the prospect of having that kind of thing for a year or more in a full campaign. So, why am I not entirely nervous about this? Well, because Critical Role has done other content beyond their main campaign in the past. I've also watched other actual plays with other talented people who are just as talented as the Critical Role cast. They're talented in different ways, but still, they're really good. Critical Role has made content with only portions of the cast joined by new people. I had my problems with Candela Obscura as a system, but I think the series were generally really, really strong and did a good job at pitching a system that I actually found to be very flawed, which goes to show the quality of the shows. And those shows had the main cast split up into a bunch of different cells, joined by a ton of new faces. And for the most part, like I said, these new faces, they worked. And it's not just Candela. A lot of their one-shots have fractions of the new cast. They had Wildmount Wildlings, a short campaign that filled the gap while we're waiting for Campaign 4. That was DM'd by Sam and had Brennan as a player. And for everyone else, completely new faces who had never touched TTRPG before. And let me tell you, this might be a hot take, but Wildmount Wildlings is my favorite short-form series they've done on Critical Role for a while. I just thought it was fun, man. I just thought it was a joy. Bringing in new faces just brings a new energy to the table. It just has to be the right kind of energy. I think people are just really, really afraid of the prospect of this going wrong, that they're ignoring the times where in the past, it's gone really right. Look, the cast that we know and love, they're safe. Right? They're familiar. We know that they work, so the prospect of doing something different is scary, but frankly, the idea of keeping this cast together, even for 11 years, it's an achievement. Okay, these people have been doing this show every single week, shooting this in studio, and for the most part, being able to keep it together. I mean, there were hiccups with Ashley Johnson scheduling. Sometimes people get pregnant or get sick and have to leave, but for the most part, we have thousands of hours of these people together. And I don't know, while I would like to see the cast together forevermore, I'm interested to see who they bring in, especially since, like, one of the only things I think is universally beloved about Campaign 3 is a new cast member in the form of Dorian. So I know that this is not just a hit with me, but with general audiences too, as long as they can do it right. In summary, I do think Critical Role can continue to be very successful as a show without Matt Mercer in the DMing chair. I think Brennan can fill in the space. And as long as they pick the right cast to fill in the spots and pick people who have chemistry and who are going to work together as seamlessly as the original Critical Role cast, I think this can be solid. I still think this can work. I've seen it work in the past. Now, what about Daggerheart? Look, I've made it no big secret that Daggerheart is not the system for me. I gravitate more towards tactical systems, which is why MCDM's Draw Steel has basically become my obsession, as well as my group's obsession. But Daggerheart has still been very successful, and I'm very happy for it. This game knew who it was for and didn't try to cater to assholes like me. They went for their own audience, which is how you make a good game. A game that tries to pick a piece of every pie and cater to everyone is a game that is made for no one. Knowing who your audience is, in my opinion, the most important part of making any sort of entertainment product. And Daggerheart did this very well. They apparently have sold out multiple times over. This game has caused a worldwide famine of D12s, as I've noticed going around some of my local stores, which is hilarious. And generally speaking, I'm really happy to see the success that Critical Role has gotten with this release. I think it's a no-brainer that they're obviously going to use it as their system for Campaign 4. I think YouTuber Luna Boffin said it best, so I'm just going to put that clip here because I couldn't say it better.
Guys, I'm just going to say it. It is going to be Daggerheart. There is no world in which they have spent millions of dollars, had two of the lead designers from D&D join their company to not use Daggerheart. It's just not going to happen.
Yeah, exactly what she said. Like, why would they play D&D? They are trying to make their own system work. No one's going to buy Daggerheart if Critical Role is out here using D&D instead. I think it's still possible, but highly unlikely. So can Daggerheart work as Critical Role's live show tool? Because it is a big part of why people watch the show. A lot of people are watching this for like the Dungeons and Dragons aspect, and I do think they're going to lose viewers over it. I don't think they're going to lose like all their viewers over it, but I think it's just an objective fact that a lot of people are going to step away from Critical Role because of the system change. I'm not using that as a way to say like Critical Role should stay with D&D forever. I don't want them to. Like, I want them to use Daggerheart. They clearly have fun playing with it, as I saw in Age of Umbra. But even if I want them to use Daggerheart, that's not the opinion of everybody. I'm not saying that's the opinion of the majority either, but I do think that they are going to lose at least some viewers. But I don't really think that matters. Like, Critical Role as a brand has lost viewers in the past. They lost a ton of viewers after the pandemic ended, and they have kept on going. If anything, they've been even stronger recently than they were during the pandemic. So yeah, I think it's fine for them to lose out on some support if they switch to their own system, especially since if people see Critical Role for the first time, get into the show in Campaign 4, and then want to adopt the game, then that is a benefit to Critical Role. That's a direct purchase into their pocket. Like Daggerheart, Legend of Vox Machina, the video game that they're developing now with the guys behind Dispatch, like all of this is expansion that Critical Role can use to continue ad infinitum. I don't think they're too big to fail, but this section of the video, I'm actually going to dedicate to something that I find very interesting, and that's the fact that as YouTube channels and Twitch channels grow, I find that a lot of them start to shed their own bonds to YouTube, to Twitch. Like, a lot of people talk about how Critical Role severed their bonds to Wizards of the Coast by swapping to Daggerheart and not using Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition anymore. But I think it's actually more interesting how they've been slowly building alternate forms of income that separate themselves from channels and platforms like YouTube and Twitch. Like, now they have their own Amazon Prime show that's also bringing them in income and revenue. They obviously have always had merch, but they've been making more of it recently than they ever have before. They have tons of collabs with large nerd businesses all across the world. They have the new video game coming out, and now they have Daggerheart, with Darrington Press in general also developing even more products. Like, these are all ways that Critical Role has diversified its portfolio. I don't think they're trying to like move away from YouTube or Twitch or anything like that, but they are setting up alternatives so that if YouTube starts losing some viewers, like if they end off a year with 10% less views, frankly, it's not that big of a deal because they have alternate forms of making money. I find that a lot of YouTubers who like overanalyze the statistics of big YouTube channels, they vastly underestimate how much YouTubers start to just like bounce off and do other stuff outside of just their only YouTube channel. Not everyone does that. I can't imagine myself doing that, but a lot of YouTubers do, especially ones that have businesses and employees like Critical Role. So yeah, I do think they're going to switch to Daggerheart, and I do think it's going to hamper their viewers somewhat, but I don't think it matters. Critical Role has grown and become more than just the Twitch show. As long as it's still pulling in the same amount of viewers as something like even Age of Umbra, which is a side campaign, even if they're still pulling in that kind of viewership, that still makes them one of, if not the biggest YouTube and Twitch streaming shows for tabletop games. Even at their worst, they're still crazy successful. And even if they were to hypothetically lose income from these revenue sources, they have other revenue sources. Frankly, Critical Role will be fine. But with all that being said, talked about the DM and player changes. I've talked about the game change. I'm actually wanting to talk about the one change that did get me a little disappointed, and that is... I'm honestly accepting of the fact that they want to do something other than Exandria. Obviously, Dimension 20, the show that Brennan hails from, they do Fantasy High as their primary setting, but they jump around to all sorts of different wild, wacky places all the time. They have a big variety. The same thing with the McElroy brothers with their show. They're always doing something new. So Critical Role wanting to do something other than their main setting makes sense. It's not like it hasn't been tested before. It's worked in other places. But the reason why I'm disappointed is not because of the prospect of a new setting. The reason I'm disappointed is because I did not like the ending of Critical Role Campaign 3. I have made that no secret. I made a whole video about the problems I had with the Critical Role Campaign 3 ending. I thought it was all right to good. I still liked the episodes because it's Critical Role. Critical Role is awesome. But from a storytelling standpoint, I felt like there were weird choices and missed opportunities. But what a lot of people said to me in the comments is, well, Crispy, all these world-building opportunities that they missed out on and didn't explore, they're obviously stuff they're leaving open for Critical Role Campaign 4. And no, they're not doing that because they're not using Exandria for Critical Role Campaign 4. They are heading to a brand new setting. And I'm not gonna lie, the prospect of not exploring a godless world with reincarnating idols roaming around, Tiamat being 4 kobolds in a trench coat, Asmodeus becoming some tyrannical Machiavellian bad guy, and the heroes have to go around and figure out which gods are good and which gods are evil. Like, that premise is interesting, and they're not doing it. Now, again, Critical Role is a D&D game that these guys have got to enjoy, and if they're not interested in running that kind of story, then that's fine. But I would like to see Exandria progress in some way and start to answer some of those big holes left in the world building that was left after Critical Role Campaign 3. Like, I don't know, man. Just as an audience member, I wanted to see those concepts explored because one of the things I liked about Critical Role Campaign 3's ending is that it did open up these questions. It didn't answer them, but they were interesting questions and opportunities for a new story. And that story is not going to happen, at least for a while, which is a shame, in my opinion. Now, as for a new setting, I do have one wish for this new setting, and that is, I really don't want it to be a traditional fantasy world, man, okay? I really don't. And the reason is because of Exandria. Exandria had its quirks, but for the most part, it was a pretty traditional fantasy world that you've seen before. Now, I love that about Exandria because it took some of those concepts into new directions, like the idea of this being like basically a post-apocalyptic setting is interesting to me. And Matt's flavor of world building combines so many elements of fantasy that I love to make a fantasy setting that I really enjoyed viewing and really enjoyed playing in when playing Dungeons & Dragons. However, if this new setting that Brandon's going to be running in is another traditional fantasy setting, then that begs the question of why the fuck didn't we just stay in Exandria? That's why I want it to be different. Because if it's just another European-based fantasy setting, humans, elves, dwarves, orcs, blah, 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 just stay in Exandria then. What's the point of doing something new if we're just doing stuff that's old? Now, as for what the setting is going to be like, I have no idea, but I do have some theories. Like, Daggerheart has brought in some of the guys behind Eberron. I've heard Chris Perkins bandying about stuff about Barovia when talking about Daggerheart. Not necessarily that he and the guys are going to be bringing Barovia into Daggerheart, but, like, they want to build something of that gothic vibe. And I don't know, something like either of those things could be really interesting. Critical Role has played in darker settings. Age of Umbra is very Dark Souls coded, and I thought the setting has worked really well, even if I haven't really gotten connected with the characters in this show, because some of them have had very short times to get connected with me. And on top of that, some of that gothic energy keeps those fantasy elements while doing something new with it. I mean, Age of Umbra has humans, orcs, elves, etc., 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 but they are in a very, very different locale, which makes it seem fresh and interesting. If they were to do something more Magitech, think Arcane or Eberron, because they just brought the designer behind that, then I think that would also work really, really well. More anachronistic fantasy settings can absolutely work. For God's sakes, Dimension 20 is stupid successful, and Fantasy High takes place in a modern-day high school. So clearly, there's an audience even for settings outside that traditional bubble. If they want to do something in a more steampunk era, I would love that. Critical Role in urban environments sounds so cool, especially since a lot of the campaigns are spent in the wilds, and my least favorite parts of every single campaign are endless treks through wilderness where they seem to be doing meandering side quests the entire time. Campaign 3, in my opinion, and while I liked Isocross in Campaign 2, I know a lot of people had their own problems with it. So yeah, an urban setting might present some new flavor. I'm just hoping for something different. If we're going to move away from the setting that Critical Role's been using for so long, let's at the very least bring something fresh to the table. But yeah, those are my thoughts on Critical Role, on Daggerheart, on Matt Mercer stepping down, becoming a player, on the new setting. I hope you guys enjoyed this latest Yap session. I truly enjoyed it. Don't worry, Critical Failure episodes, the edited long form stuff, that's coming back, but we have something to do first. You see, we have all these questions about Critical Role and Matt Mercer, and guess what? I got the opportunity to ask those questions to Matt Mercer. That's right, Matt Mercer has a VIP booth in Crispy's Tavern. Now, don't bother leaving questions for him. The episode's already been filmed as of publishing this. It literally was just filmed as of publishing this, if everything goes well. So, yeah, it's already done. But I hope you guys will consider checking out the interview we had with him. It will be released on Friday. We'll have some fun shenanigans with Mr. Mercer. It'll be great. But hey, if you guys watch all the way to the end, then please leave the comment Dagger to the Heart to let me know you were loyal to the tavern and made it all the way to the end of the video. If you want to see more of these videos, then we have a whole playlist of crispy commentaries. Our last one was about a god-awful playthrough of Baldur's Gate 3 published by Lily Orchard. In fact, my roast was so bad, she privated the video. Might have to do that again. It's linked up in the cards, but before you go, please leave a like on this one and subscribe to Crispy's Tavern. And finally, if you want to support us directly, then you can head down to our Patreon, where we publish some exclusive content. Remember, your support makes these videos possible. In essence, like, comment, subscribe, support. I will see you all next time. Farewell. Should I just hear voices, not